So first up, should the government slash public spending to fund tax cuts? The government hasn't confirmed that they're ruling out any further tax cuts. Doing so would mean a cut to public services. Do you think that's acceptable? Then is it time to double maternity pay? More and more new mums are struggling to keep up with the cost of living, so campaigners are calling for maternity pay to be doubled. They say that the government is forcing many women to choose between work and family. But what do you think? Can employers really afford to do this? After that, should we let asylum seekers work? Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has said that the government needs to rethink the rules when it comes to allowing asylum seekers to work. It's been reported that almost 16,000 asylum seekers were given jobs in sectors where there was a shortage of workers. Do you think that's fair? And finally, should grandparents have a say when it comes to naming your baby? One mother has said that her mother-in-law tried to change her baby's name just outside the delivery room. Apparently, she didn't like the name. Is it wrong for grandparents to weigh in on this parent's decision? You can give us a call on any of our talking points this morning. That number, as always, 0207 862 2222. I will repeat, 0207 862 2222. Calls from landlines may cost up to 16 pence per minute plus any call setup fees, and calls from mobiles may cost considerably more. You can also send us a message. Head to Facebook or X, search for Jeremy Vine on 5, and then if you wish, you can use the hashtag #StormHuntley. Okay, before we get into our debate, actually, it's worth saying that the Labour Party has won 2 by-elections in Wellingborough and Kingswood. But they're not the only party that's been picking up support, so the Reform Party has seen a surge too, and it would be remiss of me, Belinda, not to put this question to you. You must be celebrating today.
We're very, very happy. My former colleagues, because both Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib were Brexit Party MEPs with me in the EU Parliament, I got to know them very well. Formidable, principled men. Ben Habib has done incredibly well in Wellingborough. You know, it's the largest ever vote in a by-election Reform UK have ever had. We're going way above our polling. And Rupert Lowe in Kingswood, of course, got over 10%. This is incredible for a new party. It is so hard for new parties to break through the system at all. We don't have the massive machinery or the funds that Labour and the Tories do, but people are so fed up with the state of this country and don't trust the other two parties. So I think that's why we're pushing forward.
Is there any concern, though, from within Reform that you're actually going to make it easier for Keir Starmer to walk through those doors? Because you're pulling support from the Conservatives.
We are actually not doing anything to the Tory vote. The Tories are doing it all by themselves. They are giving the keys to Labour by their incompetence, by their failures, by their breaches of trust in their manifestos. If you want to look to anyone for handing the keys to Labour, it is the Conservative Party with an 80-seat majority. They absolutely squandered it, and it's an insult to their voters what they've done to this country. And so Reform UK are just offering more democratic choice. If you don't want Labour, if you don't want Tories, vote Reform UK.
Bobby, were you surprised at all by the results? The turnout was quite low.
The turnout was low, and I think there's some reasons for that in terms of Tory voters not wanting to turn up, die-in-the-wall Tory voters. And I'm going to let you have your day. I'm going to let you celebrate. But on the positive, I think it just shows...
There's a big Labour celebration as well.
I was going to say, on the positive, I think this just sets us up for an election victory for Labour, which is what Keir Starmer's been working towards and what many people in this country want, including former Tory voters. What I'd be worried about, Belinda, is the fact that it's so toxic, the Tory brand now, that those people have come to Reform. We'll see what happens after the election. Either this election will basically sound the death knell for the Tories, which is a very radical situation we find ourselves in, and you guys can step into the breach, or you guys are receiving a protest, you're getting the bits of a protest vote against the Tories. So,
well, it's all very interesting at the moment, and we're really heading very quickly towards a general election, which actually brings us quite nicely to our first debate topic today. We're asking, should the government slash public spending to fund tax cuts? Get your calls in for this now. 0207 862 2222 is the number. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has reportedly dropped his plans for a 2 pence cut to income tax in next month's budget, as it was revealed that the economy has entered a recession. But is this the right move for the Tories? Should he try and find the money to cut taxes by reducing the amount spent on public services like the NHS or benefits? Or should they be protecting as much money for public services as possible? Bobby, how do you feel about this? Do we need tax cuts? I mean, it would seriously benefit the Conservative Party to announce something like that.
It would benefit them in terms of maybe some of the Tories they've lost along the last 14 years coming back. And that's what's so sad about all of this, because this has got nothing to do with helping the country. This has got nothing to do with growing the economy. This is them literally knowing, come the election, which is going to happen in the next 10 months, they're going to either be a spent force or completely destroyed. So to me, it reeks of desperation. It's them trying to do something, trying to shore up all these Tories, essentially, a lot of them going to Labour, some of them going to the Reform Party. This is being done for politics and political reasons. It's got nothing to do with helping the country.
Belinda, what do you think about tax cuts? Is it the right time for that?
I'm very pro-tax cuts where...
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, especially for small businesses, especially for the middle and working classes. I think the Conservative Party have, put the taxes up so high, the highest since the Second World War, really, and now offering a few breadcrumbs like, look, aren't we wonderful? We're thinking about doing tax cuts, but oh no, we can't now, we're in a recession. I mean, it looks disastrous for them. The one thing that gets me, and Labour are responsible for this as well, is the amount of taxpayers' money that is utterly wasted in the public sector. For example, there has been 100,000 new civil service jobs in Whitehall since 2016. The number of civil servants that have doubled their salary to 100k has gone up by 88% since 2016. The amount of money that is wasted on duff projects over COVID, we're spending £8 million a day on housing men that shouldn't even be in this country. We waste, in fact, the taxpayers' allowance said we waste about £5 billion a year just in wastage. If we surely demanded more bang for our buck, and demanded that our government was held to account for spending tax money wisely, we could actually afford tax cuts.
But every government wastes a certain amount of money. I mean, it's just part of running a business. I suppose there's always going to be a bit of waste. How do you stop that from happening?
So an office set up especially, this has been suggested before, especially to manage how much bang taxpayers are getting for their buck, and are the government spending it
more
wisely?
Jobs in the public sector.
But if it cancels out, the crazy jobs that have been given out to mandarins and all sorts of people, diversity, inclusion takes about £400 million off a taxpayer every year, with the 10,000 new positions that have been created that are just simply not needed. There is wastage. They've been complacent and negligent on how they spend the tax money. It needs to be spent wiser.
Can I just quickly stand up for public spending and also tell you, Belinda, I do agree with you. What we've got essentially in the modern day Tory party is an incompetent kind of super political class. And you're totally right. They have spent money, spaffed it up the wall.
They've spaffed it up the wall. That is perfect.
There you go. And they've wasted it. But unlike a lot of people on the right who are ideologically wedded to tax cuts, I do think if money spent intelligently, you can actually make a case for it. I'll give you an example in terms of, and I know you may not like Biden, but he spent over $3 trillion in infrastructure projects and stimulus projects, and you can see that in the American economy, poverty has reduced by 44%. Not massively, but it started going down.
It's interesting that you're saying you would like to see public spending. Well, they haven't suggested that public spending will go up, but certainly if there's going to be tax cuts, they're going to have to find that money from somewhere, and so public spending could go down. But in investing in projects and things that could increase jobs, surely we just need that public spending to go into our NHS that's in a disastrous situation. We've got crumbling walls and schools, people can't get a GP appointment. There are really basic fundamentals that even the amount that we're spending at the moment isn't covering.
Well, it's what we call broken Britain. Everyone says it. Britain's not the same as what it used to be. None of the trains run on time. Education's decimated. The NHS is decimated. That's what makes a country. That's what gives us a backbone. That's what makes us happy to live here.
Yeah, but higher taxes put people off from working, put people off from investing in the country. It really stagnates growth, these massive high taxes, because people are thinking, is it really worth it? I'm not seeing my tax spent very well. I'm being taxed so hard, I'm taking less and less to my family, and yet, as you said, there's potholes. I can't get a GP appointment. What is it all for? And it's demoralising how badly it's spent.
When we actually look at what Jeremy Hunt said in terms of who the tax could be cut for, what he said is we need to look at other lighter tax states like the USA and Canada, and he says particularly lighter taxes on businesses. So we're talking business tax, we're talking the uber rich here are going to see these tax cuts. We're not talking about people that are really suffering from the cost of living crisis. And is that necessarily where we want to see these taxes being cut, if indeed we're going to see it?
Well, I'd say it was part of it. It's not where we should always be focused on, because we do want investment into this country. And Liz Truss wanted corporation tax to come down. That would have stimulated growth. That would have brought in more money than it cost. But Jeremy Hunt reversed that. You know, there have been decisions, I think, that have been poorly made, far too terrified. There's this sort of groupthink in Westminster, especially amongst the sort of Treasury and civil service, that just do not want to take any risk and would rather err on the side of caution. Too much so that it's not stimulating growth. And lower taxes for even like the mega wealthy can attract them to this country that are wealth creators and job creators in themselves.
So we should take a leaf out of Liz Truss's book.
No, we should take any kind of leaf out of that.
Some of her policies
policies
good.
have literally thrown families onto the street. And, you know, look, we know what happened with interest rates. That's not groupthink. That's
a fragile
real life
market reaction.
Okay, but that's a real life reaction that actually happened to real life decisions within the Treasury.
Okay. Well, look, I think we're agreeing on Tory incompetence and spending money, though. So.
Okay, let's go to calls on that minor agreement. Lindsay from Hampshire, what's your views on this? Would you like to see tax cuts, even if it means that they'll have to recoup that money elsewhere?
I think we need to look at the root issue and outcomes. And I think, firstly, we have a government and a cabinet and parliament largely who have no knowledge of real life. And if you have no knowledge of it, if you have no knowledge of healthcare, have no knowledge of self-care, education, etc., how can you advise? And I think to me, that's one of the biggest issues. Of course, we need to have people who have business knowledge, quite rightly so. But I actually think we have a government who are, in a way, criticising social care systems, etc., and other businesses, and they have no knowledge of that.
Well, that's one of the criticisms, isn't it, of cutting taxes, is actually it only really benefits the wealthy because, you know, they've got private healthcare, Belinda, so they don't really care whether the NHS is going down the Swanee and nobody can get an appointment with their GP because they'll just pay for one, probably this same consultant.
I think they do care. I mean, I've never been mega wealthy, so I don't know what it feels like, but I do think there is this feeling of the average Brit that they do want to take care of those less well off. Most people, vast majority, support the benefit system and taking care of people.
Yeah, but do the current government fully understand what it is to live in the real world?
I think that's
to have
a very good
access
point.
to NHS.
I actually do think that's a very good point. I do think politicians should have to have a job first before they go into politics. I think that would make a massive difference.
Well, Rishi Sunak did. It doesn't mean that he's not wealthier than the Queen.
No, that's true. That's true. But I do think in public service, even if it is, you know, on your weekends, politicians doing soup kitchens or going around volunteering, I think that has to be somewhere on a CV to have a real-world experience.
We're at risk of agreeing here, Bobby. Are you feeling the same way as Belinda?
I'm happy to agree with Belinda, even if I woke up this morning and decided I wouldn't. Look, I have Fridays off. I work at a food bank on Fridays, and the reason I've done that is not because I'm a politician. The reason I've done that is because I felt I needed to understand what was happening in the country, and I wanted to get my head around it and also just give some service back, which I think any right-minded individual will do. Now I've been there for nearly a year, it's hit me that there's a superclass of people, of politicians, who just don't actually get into what's happening in Britain most of the time. And I think we're at a loss as a country because of that. And the Tories at the moment are the worst kind because most of those guys don't know what it's like
they
to
need to
even
go
be
to pubs more often. They should go and sit in the local pub and make some pals.
And thank you very much for your call. Nigel from Warwickshire, what's your thoughts on this? Oh, sorry, we're going to speak to Anne now from Herefordshire. What's your thoughts on this, Anne?
Yeah, hi, I'm Anne. I'm from Hertfordshire. I just think this won't work because we've just had a £45 a month rise in our rent, and we're pensioners. And the day centres we go to for a bit of fun, or play cards or have lunch or meet up with friends, and I miss that. That's not been put back. We can't meet up with our friends because they've closed the community centres. And what are we supposed to do?
They've closed
watch TV all day.
They closed the community centres because they're cuts to public spending. So I'm presuming
money. Yeah.
So you don't want to see any more cuts to public spending. What about Belinda's?
Like we don't matter. The elderly don't matter, so we've cut that community centre.
Well, interestingly, we did
because I miss my friends.
We did a debate, I think earlier this week, where we said, should there be a minister for older people? And you should have called for that.
Yeah,
you should have been
definitely.
an advocate for it. Maybe you're being missed out. But what about Belinda's suggestion that actually there are many, many cuts that you could make to the public sector in order to fund tax cuts and potentially put more money into...
They put the rent up, but they still didn't give us our community centre back.
So you would like to see more investment?
If they're in debt, that's not my problem. They can't run the council properly. That's not my problem.
That's austerity. What you're talking about?
I want to meet up with my friends and have fun twice a week.
Well, maybe you could do it around somebody's house, Anne. Take turns.
Well, we had a community centre. There was 50 of us.
Oh, 50, yeah, that's... Who's got a living room that big?
What, Anne?
And it was fantastic, and now we miss it. We've not been there for 2 years.
Councils are really struggling. Anne, thank you very much for your call. Sorry, did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to agree with Anne and just say, actually, what Anne's talking about is massively important. What makes a country? You know, when we wake up in the morning, we don't just go, I'm here to earn money. We want to live a really good life, a life with other humans, a social life where we have meaning beyond just our mortgages. And Anne is a perfect example of what's been cut via austerity and what I think in terms of a country where we're going down the wrong path. We need to think about why we're here, not just how much money
but I would say the way we're going down the wrong path is by, for example, Rishi agreeing to send £1.6 billion to a UN-backed climate fund out of the blue during a cost of living. I do think governments have lost their way and they're not focusing on the British people first. I would love to do community centres for the elderly and take care of our elderly, but that is where our governments fail. They're too involved in international funding of projects. Start with home first.
Nigel from Warwickshire, what's your views on this?
Productivity in the public sector has collapsed since the beginning of COVID. But the overall problem is that we have too many, spending is too high. It's not rigidly reviewed. And look at the NHS, too many administrators. Look at the Home Office. They don't actually deal with illegal immigrants. What I would do is get rid of the Home Office's involvement in illegal immigration and have a private firm do it.
Oh, so you would privatise it? Well, that's interesting. I'm sure there'll be criticisms to that. In fact, Nigel, in one sentence, I think you've brought up about 5 different debates there. So, I mean, well done you. But it sounds like you're going down Belinda's sort of thinking in this, that actually we need somebody to step in, an administrator, somebody to step in, an accountant perhaps, to go, you're useless, you're not needed. We could save on that and try and reduce public spending that way. Would you be for that?
I think you should look at privatising the Department of Transport and look at how to get funds in, like false
But look at our water networks, Nigel. Look at the water companies; they're privatised. Has that worked out for us?
The regulation is appalling. You need better regulation. So
you would have national regulation in public or privatised companies. Interesting, Nigel. Thank you very much for your call. We've ran out of time, unfortunately, but thank you for all your calls on this. After the break, is it time to double maternity?